أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير ثم أما بعد والحمد لله. Respected brothers and sisters, welcome to another one of our weekly Islamic studies class lessons. And in this class, inshallah, after having discussed the prayer times and when each salah comes in terms of time and when the time of each salah exits, we are today, inshallah, I hope, in a stretch of a lesson, going to cover Azaan, Iqaamah, the faraid of salah, the wajibat of salah, as well as the sunan of salah, i.e. cover the chapter of Azaan, Iqaamah and salah, inshallah. First of all, the call to prayer, Azaan, and its commencement is called its Iqaamah. Azaan means to make an announcement, to make a call. And Iqaamah is to announce its commencement, that is about to begin. The Azaan and Iqaamah are both emphasized sunnahs for the 5 daily prayers and the Friday prayer, yet not for any other prayer. So there is no Azaan or Iqaamah for any other prayer except for the 5 daily prayers and for the Friday prayer. Not for Eid, not for Janazah, not for Istisqa, not for Salatul Khawf, Kusuf, Khusuf, and there are other salawat or nawafil. It's only for the 5 daily salahs and for the Friday prayer, for Jumu'ah prayer. It is an emphasized sunnah, which means that one should ensure that it's done whether they are praying alone or even in a jama'ah. Of course, in the masjid, it's from the symbols of Islam, from the sha'air and from the symbols of Islam. So for a masjid to establish the calling of the Adhan and Iqamah is wajib. But it's actual as ibadah, as a form of duty upon every single Muslim when you pray your salawat, whether you're praying alone or in congregation, Adhan and Iqamah are from the sunnahs. Which means that if you're praying at home, you should also do Adhan and Iqamah. If you're praying alone, you should also try to do Adhan and Iqamah. If you're praying alone in the middle of a desert, you might think, who's going to listen to my prayer? Who's going to listen to my call? And yet it's a sunnah to call the Adhan and the Iqamah. When one hears the Adhan being performed, according to the sunnah, he should respond. So we've understood that we have to call the Adhan and the Iqamah. How about the person who's listening to the Adhan and Iqamah? It is from the sunnah that you must respond to the Adhan when it is being called. And so it's very important that when you listen to the Adhan, that you're not playing games, or you're not listening to anything else, or you're not watching. If you're watching a game, you should pause it. You should respond to the Adhan. If you're watching something, you must respond to the Adhan. It's from the adab and from the sunan of listening to the Adhan. You have to say respond. How do you respond? For every single phrase, you say the same except for Hayya ala salah and Hayya ala al-falah. Okay, you say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Just to clarify here, there are some common mistakes in the Adhan and the Iqamah. Of them, some people say, Ashhadu Allah ilaha illallah. They think this is Allah's name. But in reality, it's actually Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah. So it's Ashhadu an la. Allah is empty. It's not Allah. Same for so Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah for both the times, in Adhan and in Iqamah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, the end of it is a ta marbuta, it means it's a ha. And falah, end of it is a ha, not a ha. Some people say hayya ala al-falah. That's a mistake. It's hayya ala al-falah, means success. Salah is a ha, the salat. It's a ha, if you pronounce it like that. It's not salah or anything else. These are common mistakes. Allahu Akbar, Allahu. Another common mistake. A lot of people say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allah. They say the Ra as a fatha. But this is a mistake. It's supposed to be Dhamma. Because Allahu Akbaru, Mubtada and Khabar. Allah is the greatest. Both are Madmuma. Allahu Akbaru. So that means if you join it, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Like that. And that's why even for the Eid, when you say the takbirat, Allahu Akbar, Allah. For Adhan and Iqamah, Allahu Akbar, Allah, not Allah. This is very common mistake. We need to clarify that. So after the mu'adhin, or while the mu'adhin is calling the adhan, it is important for the listener to respond to the adhan. It's from the sunan, from the sunnah. And then after the adhan is finished, one should make the dua of adhan, which is Allahumma rabba hadhihi ad-da'wat at-tamma wa as-salat al-qa'imah ati Muhammadan al-wasilata wal-fadila wab'athu maqam mahmudan alladhi wa'adta. This is a asking of Allah for the station and the status of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be raised. The phrase Allahu Akbar is said. So now we'll listen to the basics and explain it quickly. We'll read through it for the benefit of those who may not know how adhan is called, beginners, etc. The phrase Allahu Akbar is said 4 times in adhan, okay, at the beginning, while the remaining phrases are said twice. So Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, 4. As for Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, twice. Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, twice. Hayya ala salah, twice. Hayya al falah, twice. As-salatu khayru min an-nawm at fajr, if you say, twice. Qad qamat as-salah for Iqaamah, twice. Allahu Akbar, twice, in the second time. And then La ilaha illallah is once. So 4 takbirat at the beginning, rest of them is 2, except for La ilaha illallah, which is once. Okay, the person calling the adhan should pause shortly between each set of the phrases, while he should hasten in the Iqaamah. We probably know what it means, right? Allahu Akbar means Allah is the greatest. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah means I testify that there is none worthy of worship except for Allah, and we know that from the Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah means I testify that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah. That's what it means. Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, come to salah. Hayya al falah, come to success. In the Fajr adhan, we say as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm after Hayya al falah. After Hayya al falah, as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. It means prayer is better than sleep. Okay? And the response to that is sadaqta. You know, for when you listen to the adhan, you're supposed to respond. How do you respond to as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm? Is sadaqta wa barakta. Sadaqta wa barakta. Both additions for Fajr and for the Iqamah are okay. Now we've understood. And of course, Allah Akbar, la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah means that there is none worthy of worship except for Allah Azza wa Jal. The person calling the adhan should pause shortly between each set of the phrases. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, if you want to say it individually. Or Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And then you pause. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Okay, while we should hasten in the Iqamah. Iqamah should be Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. According to Hanafi school of law, the Iqamah is the same as adhan in terms of numbers. Except for qad qamat as-salah, you say after Hayya al-falah. According to Shafi'i and other schools, is Allahu Akbar twice. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah is half basically. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, Hayya al-salah, Hayya al-falah, qad qamat as-salah, qad qamat as-salah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. It is disliked for someone in the state of major ritual impurity to perform either of the adhan or the Iqamah, or for someone in the state of minor ritual impurity to perform the Iqamah. So adhan and Iqamah should be called while you're in the state of tahara. You have ghusl, you have wudu. Neither of the two may be recited except in Arabic. Can you say adhan in English? Allah is the greater. You can't do that. If someone decided, oh, you know what, people are not going to understand, but it has to be in Arabic. It's from the sha'a'ir, from the symbols of Islam. From the symbols of Islam. You can't start translating the symbols of Islam. Otherwise, soon you're going to start saying Fatiha in English, in Salah as well. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Like that. And then you're going to say, Alhamdulillah. So you have to say in Arabic. Adhan and Iqamah have to be both in Arabic. It is recommended that the person calling the adhan be a righteous person. Mu'adhin is not any person. Mu'adhin is a good person. Is a righteous person. And the mu'adhin has a special reward in Yawm al-Qiyamah. They have the longest necks, which means they have the longest, greatest honor, or longest necks, so that Allah will make that a sign of their status, that everyone is going to recognize them. It will be a positive thing. You might be thinking, I don't want a long neck, I'm quite happy with the size of my neck. No, this is a sign of honoring, and it will be amazing for Yawm al-Qiyamah. And it's a reward from Allah. It is recommended that the person calling adhan be a righteous person, be one who knows both sunnah of how to perform the adhan as well as the prayer times. So yes, you have to know how to do adhan, but also traditionally and originally, the mu'adhin is the one that knows, is the hafiz of the times, knows exactly when salah comes in, because he's the one that's actually announcing. He's the prayer timetable. The mu'adhin is also the prayer timetable. according to the original form of it. So they should know the prayer times and when it starts and when it ends. So this is very important. Be in a state of purity. They should be in wudu. They should be face the qibla. Facing the qibla is from also from the conditions of the adhan and the iqamah. And they should place their index finger on their ears or their hand. This is from the sunnah. This is how it's been passed on. If someone does it without it, adhan will still be valid. It's not a problem. Adhan is adhan even without the touching of the ears. But it's from the method transmitted. Okay, so like that. And turn only his face towards the right. When you say hayya ala salah, towards the right. And then back. Hayya ala salah, towards the right. That's for adhan only, no iqamah. Hayya al falah, towards the left. Back. Hayya al falah. And back. And then you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, towards the front. We've understood how adhan and iqamah works now, yeah? We're going to be a bit quick today because we've got a lot to cover. Now, before salah, there are some conditions. You can't just go straight into salah. There are some conditions you need to first meet before even attempting salah. First of all, you have to be in a state of purity. If someone needs ghusl, they can't go prepare for salah. The preparation is they have to be in a state of purity and have wudu. So have ghusl and have wudu. Number 2, be free from any physical filth on one's garment, body and place of prayer. In Bangla, they say Jaiga Pak, Jama Pak, Jaiga Pak, Jama Pak, Shorir Pak, Satoddaha, Qibla Mukhi Hua. My dad used to make us memorize when you're younger from this book. Being free from any physical filth on one's garment, on body, and place of prayer. It's absolutely imperative that you make sure that the place of prayer is also clean. Yes, you are allowed to pray on grass. Yes, you are allowed to pray on concrete. Yes, you're allowed to pray on sand and dust and everything else, as long as it's pure. Okay? But if you have a form of, like, say for example, prayer mat, then you should place that down for extra precaution. That's jaiz, that's encouraged. Some brothers intentionally avoid using prayer mats as if it's not allowed or something. You should make sure that the place of prayer is pure and clean. If you're not sure, then put something down so that it's pure. Especially if you go to like random places like service stations. You know, sometimes you're praying on the side, on the car. Usually we choose, isn't it? Naturally we choose like a bay that's toward the corner of the car park. But guess who else chooses that spot? We know who else chooses that spot, isn't it? People that want to drink stuff, people that want to relieve themselves, strange people as well. So you have to make sure it's a clean spot and use a prayer mat if you have it and if needed. So your place and your body and your garments are free from any filth. That's condition number 2. Number 3, you have to cover your awrah. You have to make sure you cover your awrah to the best of your ability. For the man, it's from the navel belly button until below the knee, according to majority of the scholars. Some scholars have allowed above the knee as well. Okay, some scholars, I believe it's in the Maliki school as well as in the Hanbali school of law, it is permitted. The awrah of the man is from the navel above until, but majority of the scholars say from the navel until and including the knees. So you should. That's why men should be encouraged to have 3/4 pants. 3/4 pants, not half pant. 3/4 pants, because it's better. It's astar. That's of course the bare minimum. But should we go for the bare minimum? You're meeting Allah. Allah says, "Ya bani Adam, khudhu zinatakum 'inda kulli masjid." Try to look your best, or look your best when you go to any masjid, any time for salah, any masjid. So this is the bare minimum with which you suffice. But if you have more nice clothes, if you have a thobe to wear, if you have a imamah to wear, if you have a hat to wear, if you have a this to wear, to make yourself beautiful, of course you should do that, and you do that, and that's good, and that's encouraged. Covering the awrah. Number 4, facing the qibla. You have to try your best to know which way qibla is. And you have to try and angle it straight towards the qibla. A little bit of right and left here and there because you're so far from the qibla is forgiven, is negligible. But you have to be as accurate as possible. If you don't know which way the qibla is, you find out. You get a compass out. You get the qibla finder out. You get the map out. Or if you know, for example, in England, qibla is towards southeast. So you can easily measure, look at the sun. By looking at the sun, you can see which way the sun is. If it's there, that means if it's rising, then it's in the east. If it's rising, it's towards the east from that west. From there, you can figure out which way southeast is. Of course, you can use a compass, you can use an app, you can use. If there is no way of finding out, then you ask someone. If there's no way of asking someone, then what you do is you make a judgment call. You make a judgment call. You try to make some best of your ability, try to figure it out, and you go for that. That's condition number 4, ensuring that you're facing the Qibla. Number 5, making sure that the prayer time is in. You can't just pray any time. You have to make sure that it's time for the Salah that you're about to pray. And the Salah is time. There is time, is accurate. Number 6, intention of the Salah is the 6th condition before you even start Salah. And the condition, mahalluha al-qalb. Niyyah is in the heart. Niyyah is in the heart. So you make the intention in your heart, in your mind, that I am praying the Salah. Number 7, tahrima. Allahu Akbar. Takbir al-tahrima. Allahu Akbar. This is from the conditions of Salah. So that tahrima is the transitional point between outside Salah and inside Salah. Some scholars have said that this is inside Salah. Others have said this is just outside Salah, that puts you into Salah. Do you see what I'm trying to say? But ultimately, it's apart from the integrals or from the conditions of the Salah or from the integrals of the Salah. These 7 things you've made sure of. Now, you're good to go. Time to pray. So then, the way fiqh is done is, you go for in order of importance. What are the integrals? What are the most important things? We've done the same thing for wudu. What's fard? What's imperative? What's wajib? What's mandatory? And then what's also sunnah. We're going to say what's integral, imperative, and then wajib, and then sunnah in order of importance. It doesn't mean that we're saying that this is our salah. We're not drawing the picture of salah yet. Inshallah, after these lessons, we will do a practical lesson as well of wudu and salah, inshallah. Hopefully, we're not going to get the carpet wet, but we'll show in action, inshallah, it should be done. As salah as well. So what are the absolutely imperative integrals, structure of the salah without which salah is non-existent? If one of these are not there, that means salah is non-existent. It's not accepted. You have to do the entire salah again. Of them is the takbir al-tahrim, to actually Allahu Akbar. Then standing, the qiyam in salah. If someone says, I forgot to stand in salah, is the salah valid? Then what have you done? If you haven't stood, then what have you done? Standing, if you are able to, then it's absolutely from the integrals of the salah. If someone has got a medical condition, they can't stand, they want to sit down, that sitting is considered as standing, but the standing itself is there. The other is an alternative, but standing is is a second integral of the salah. Third integral, without these integrals, without which the salah will not be valid, is reciting Quran, even if it's just one ayah. Hold on, you might be thinking that the guy didn't say Fatiha. Fatiha is there, is coming to wajib. But the minimum amount is to recite some Quran. If, for example, someone forgot Fatiha, they can do sajda sahu, and they can correct themselves. But if someone didn't recite any Quran at all, not even one ayah, then that salah is not, you can't fix that. You have to do the whole salah again. So you have to do some Quran. What do I mean by that? In reality, you pray Fatiha, recite Fatiha, and then you recite another surah. But the integral, the minimum, the imperative amount is that you recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Sorry, some Quran. Number 4 is ruku', bowing. Like that, Allahu Akbar, you bow and your back is straight, your hands are on your knees, and your eyes are in your place of your prostration. Ruku', sujood, prostration. Prostration is when the 7 of your bones and your nose are touching the ground. What are the 7 bones? Your forehead, your hands, your knees, and your toes. These are 7 bones. They're all touching the ground, and your nose. Nose is not a bone. This is the flesh part. The bone is a bit further in. That's why the hadith says 7 bones, i.e. those. That's how you do sajda. A common mistakes in sajda. There are many common mistakes, to be honest. Of them is that people putting their knees down. You have to raise your knees. You have to raise your knees. You have to leave a gap. Of them is some people are leaving their hands too wide out. You should leave it close. Of them is others are disturbing. They're like disturbing their fellow musalli next to them. There's a mistake. You're pushing them and etc. You have to take your space, but make space underneath. Your elbows should not be touching the ground. Your knees should be touching the ground, but not your elbows. Your palms, your knees, your toes, your forehead, and your nose. Not your elbows. You have to raise it. Final sitting. And tashahhud. So at-tahiyyat is also a part of at-tahiyyat. The final sitting. If someone doesn't do the final sitting, if it's for 2 rak'at, then what's the final sitting is after 2 rak'at. If it's 4 rak'at, then the final sitting is after 4 rak'at. If it's 3 rak'at, then the final sitting is after 3 rak'at. Do you know what I mean? Like at-tahiyyatu lillah, that position. That final sitting is an integral. If you don't do that, you can't repair the salah. But if someone missed the sitting in the middle, like after 2 rak'at you forgot because you're praying 4 rak'at, or after 2 rak'at you forgot because you're praying 3 rak'at of maghrib, then you can do sajda sahu. But these 6 things are integrals, without which the body and the structure and the skeleton of the salah is not complete. Of course, this is according to Hanafi school of law. Right. It is obligatory, fard, for one praying to end the prayer by their own action. It is mandatory, wajib, that this action be saying of salam, assalamu alaikum. So, in order for you to complete your salah, you have to intentionally and actively end the salah yourself. You shouldn't be just like you just walk off randomly. You intentionally, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, with the intention of ending the salah, then your salah is finished. You don't just finish your at-tahiyyat and just walk off, then salah is not finished. Some of it sounds funny, but it's important to know this. That was the integrals, fara'id. As you know, many times we've said before, in the Hanafi school of law, there's a difference between fard and wajib. Now, what are the wajibat? What are the wajib things in salah? What are the wajib things in salah? Among them are the following. To say Allahu Akbar, specifically as opposed to other phrases to begin the prayer. Raising the hands, Allahu Akbar, saying Allahu Akbar specifically is wajib. To recite Fatiha and as well as a surah of at least 3 verses for any of the 2 rak'at, after it in any of the 2 rak'at of the obligatory prayer and in all rak'ahs of the voluntary prayers. So in fard salah you pray Fatiha and then another surah. This is wajib. Fatiha and another surah. This surah, minimum, what's intended by a surah is 3 ayat minimum. Of course, if you say, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, that's a known surah. But what if you're reciting from a big surah, then at least 3 verses, if they're short verses. If they're long, if it's a longer ayah, then 1 ayah will suffice. Like for example, if someone is reciting Lillahi or Huwa Allah, or Allahu, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum, so on. Or even if it's ayat, there are long ayat, 1 ayah will suffice. Okay? So reciting Fatiha and another surah is wajib too. Number 3, to do the above recitation specifically in the first 2 rak'at. First 2 rak'at of the obligatory salah, you do the Fatiha and surah. Number 4, to perform the prostration with most of the forehead and part of the nose. That's how you do the prostration. Number 5, to perform the second prostration before moving on to other parts of the prayer. To do both the sujood together in order. Number 6, to be still for at least a moment in every integral of the prayer. If you are rushing so fast in your salah, such that you're not still in any of them, in any of the integrals, that means your salahs, you have missed out a wajib. So you have to take it easy, slow and calm. The first sitting, if you have 4 rak'at and you have first sitting, you have 3 rak'at, you have first sitting, right? First tashahhud. That's wajib. The last one is fard, is integral. To recite the entire tashahhud in both sittings is wajib. At-tahiyyatu lillahi was-salawatu wat-tayyibat. Assalamu alayka ayyuha an-nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. To recite that is the entirety of it in both tashahhuds. Tahiyyatu, the first sitting and the second sitting, entire of it is wajib. To recite the word Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah when you say salam. To recite qunut. Number 10. What else is wajib in salah? The qunut in the witr salah. The dua in the witr salah. Whenever you do the qunut, whether you do it before the ruku', after the ruku', the qunut itself is wajib. To recite the extra 6 takbirs of Eid salah is wajib. It's going to a different chapter slightly about Eid salah, but it's about saying what are things that are wajib in salah. Of them is the Eid. We'll come to Eid salah anyway, independently, separately anyway. For the Imam to recite the Quran out loud in the first 2 rak'ahs of the loud obligatory prayers. In Fajr, in Maghrib and in Isha, the Imam, it is wajib for him to recite the Quran loudly. If the Imam recites in those 3 salawat, the first 2 rak'at quietly, accidentally, then he would have missed the wajib and he has to rectify that with sajda sahu. Otherwise, missing it out completely will require for the salah to be repeated. For both the Imam and the one praying alone to recite the Quran silently in the other rak'ahs of the obligatory prayers. Meaning, Fajr, of course, is all loud. Maghrib, last rak'ah, quietly. Isha, last rak'ah, quietly. It's also wajib. Basically, where loud, loud. Where quiet, quiet. As it ought to be. These are the 13 wajibat mentioned here in Salah. Now come to the sunan. Emphasize sunnahs of Salah. Emphasize sunnahs of Salah. Among them, number 1, before the tahrima, to raise the hands parallel to the ears, except for the free woman who raises the hands parallel to the shoulders. So there is a slight difference between the salah of the man and the woman. According to some scholars, there is no difference. But here it will mention the difference. For a man, parallel to the ears, you raise your hands according to Hanafi school of law. And that's when you tahrima, you raise your hands up to the level. You don't have to necessarily touch your ears, like some people mistakenly do. But up to the level of the ears, and your hand is facing forward, your fingers are facing forward. Allahu Akbar. Then you fold your arms thereafter. That is from the before the tahrima, to raise the hands. So the raising of the hands to the ears is a sunnah. To keep the fingers spaced apart for the tahrima. Not like this, like that for the tahrima, for Allahu Akbar at the beginning. For the man to place the right hand over the left hand under the navel. So when you tie your hands, you know, like sometimes we're debating about where should you tie your hands. Chest, belly, below belly button. Notice it's all about the sunnah. At the end of it, whatever you decide is a sunnah. It's not such a big deal like a fard, a wajib that you need to fight over it. Okay, so the sunnah is to, and again, I don't say sunnah in the sense of it's not important. I mean, we know what the position of the sunnah is, how important it is, but we're saying that it should not lead to quarrels and fights in masjids and dispute and disunity. That's not what's intended from this. All of it is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ and his Sahaba, which means they are all correct. So for the man to place the right hand above the left and below just under the navel. Just under the navel. If someone was to place it on the navel, or slightly above the navel, or even on the chest, would their salah be affected, impacted? Would they be wrong? No. It would be fine. It would be fine. To pronounce the opening supplication of the prayer, thana. So saying Subhanakallahum at the beginning of the salah is sunnah. It's not wajib. If someone misses it, then they wouldn't have missed the wajib. They don't necessarily have to do sajda for that. But it's a sunnah, and therefore you should not miss it. It's an emphasized sunnah, which means emphasized sunnah means sunnah mu'akkada, means you have to do it every time. If you leave it accidentally or sometimes, then it would not be a blameworthy thing or a mistake or a sin. But if you make a consistent habit of missing it out, then you would be sinful. You'd be blameworthy, you'd become sinful. To pronounce the ta'awudh in the first rak'ah only for the sake of the recitation of the Quran. From the sunan is A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim only in the first rak'ah before Fatiha. Rest of it is just Bismillah before the surahs. You don't say A'udhu billah again in the second rak'ah and etc. That was number 5. Number 6, to pronounce the Basmala before Fatiha in every rak'ah except for the follower. Okay, so to pronounce the Basmala before the Fatiha in every single rak'ah. And we know that we say Bismillah quietly. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we say it quietly. Other madhabs, they say it loudly. In the Hanafi, we say it quietly. It's all fine. La bas. To say Ameen after the Fatiha as well as Rabbana lakal hamd from when you raise from bowing. So after Fatiha, وَغَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَالضَّالِّينَ Ameen. Ameen, saying Ameen is sunnah mu'akkada. So you should say it. Whether you say it loudly or quietly, you must say it. Because sunnah mu'akkada, you should say it. Sunnah mu'akkada, to say Ameen. In the Hanafi school of law, we say it quietly. Other schools, they say it loudly. No problem, inshallah. رَبَّنَا لَكَ الْحَمْدِ To say رَبَّنَا لَكَ الْحَمْدِ as well as after rising from ruku' is also sunnah mu'akkada. To say the above thana, to say Subhanakallahumma, A'udhu billah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ameen, and Rabbana lakal hamd, to say them all quietly according to so saying Subhanak Allahumma quietly, A'udhu Billah quietly, Bismillah quietly, Ameen quietly, Rabbana lakal hamd quietly. All of this to say it quietly is from the emphasized sunan in the Hanafi school of law. For the Imam to say the takbirs out loud, of course, he has to say it loudly. To say the takbirs of going into bowing and prostration as well as when rising from prostration. These takbirat are emphasized sunan and must be said by the Imam. To recite the tasbih 3 times in both bowing and in prostration. To say Subhan Rabbil Azim, or Subhan Rabbil A'la, or Sabuhun Quddus, Rabbul Malaikatul Ruh, and the prostration. Those tasbihat, to say them at least 3 times each in ruku' and sujood is from the emphasized sunan. To recite the Fatiha in the last 2 rak'ahs of a 4 rak'ah prayer. And in the 3rd rak'ah of Maghrib. To recite the Fatiha in the last 2 rak'ahs of a 4 rak'ah and in the 3rd rak'ah. So Fatiha at least by itself, is from the sunan as well. Of course, it's wajib. Previously we've said it's wajib for you to say some Quran, but in here it's saying to recite the Fatiha in the last 2 rak'ahs of 4 rak'ah. Let's see what the footnote says. Saying Sami Allah, no, sorry, footnote number is 245. It says, for these rak'ahs, it is best to recite Fatiha followed by the merit of Subhanallah 3 times, followed by okay, khalas. So from the emphasized sunan is also to recite to send blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the final sitting. So at-tahiyyat is wajib, but saying Allahumma salli, Allahumma barik is sunnah mu'akkada. To supplicate afterwards, like for example, Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi dhulman kathira, is also from the emphasized sunan. To turn a person's head towards the right and the left for the salam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, is also from the emphasized sunan of the salah. To intend to greet the angels, guardian angels and the imam when making the closing salams. In your head, in your mind, when you're saying the salams, it should be an intention to meet to say salam towards the angels, as well as when closing the salam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, is sunnah in that regard. Okay. Lastly, etiquette, adab of the prayer. So it's just little addition to say after sunnah. This is also important. This is also additional. Among them, for the man to take his hands out of his loose flowing sleeves when performing the tahrima. So you shouldn't be covering up and saying tahrima like that. You should leave your hands out and empty. To direct one's glance towards the place of prostration when standing. So when you're standing in salah, your eyes should be looking at the place of sujood. The top of one's feet while bowing, so you should be, and when you go to ruku', you should be looking at the place of the top of your feet, and the top of one's nose while in prostration. Your eyes, so this is basically telling you where your eyes should be. When you're standing, in the place of sujood. When you're in ruku', top of your foot, towards your foot. When you're in sujood, your eyes should be towards your nose. And the lap while sitting. When you're sitting down in tashahhud, your eyes should be towards your lap, between your thighs, in your lap. And each shoulder when making the closing salams. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, towards the shoulder you're looking your eyes. To try one's best to refrain from coughing or to keep one's mouth closed when yawning. So from the adab of salah is also that when you're coughing and etc., well, you should try not to cough basically as much as possible, because to make excessive noises is not good in salah. So try to be still and be calm, composed, and only doing actions of salah in salah is what's required. That's all we'll cover for today, inshallah. And then there's a section about what are the du'as of salah. That you can, inshallah, reference yourself. You can check. You should know what are the du'as. But this is the general structure of salah according to the Hanafi school of law. Other schools have slight differences, and la ba'sa bih, it's not a problem, inshallah. Are there any questions?
When we go to prostrate, do we put our knees first or our hands?
Your knees first. Yeah.
Well, I read, you know the book, The Love of Allah, something, they say the opposite. They say, so I've been confused.
It's not a big deal. From what I know, it's knees first. It's in order of your body descending, knee first. Because otherwise you'll be very problematic. How are you going to put your hand first and then your knees are still floating and then you have to put it down? It's very difficult. Maybe, Allahu Alam, maybe it could have been a mistake. From what I know, it should be knees first in order of descending. Any other questions? Yes, Mushraf. Why are you in the corner? I can't even see you.
But if you know if you're joining Salah late and the Imam's in the court,
yeah,
can you deliberately miss out the Salah?
That's not deliberately, that's because you have to.
So, but when have time to read it and then join Salah.
Yeah, then if you have time, you should read that, yes. So the brother asked a question. Brother asked a very important question. Like I could say. Amazing. If you have time, so Allahu Akbar, Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika wa tabarak asmuka, and then you go to ruku. But if you feel like you're going to miss it, then you go straight to ruku.
So I don't know how strong his opinion is, but some say apparently during Zuhr and Asr, when you praying behind the Imam, you don't need to recite because the Imam makes intention for everyone.
That's actually the official position of the Hanafi school of law. Yeah, but so it would come maybe at some point. But according to Hanafi school of law, the muqtadi does not recite in any of the salawats, any Quran, only the du'as and tasbihat they recite. Why? Because there is a long discussion. There's a lot of beef, if you like, back and forth. It is the official position of the school, so it's very strong. If something is the official position of a school, this is like a general rule of thumb, yeah? I'm not saying that because we're talking about Hanafi school. But if a official school of law, which has been existing for more than 1,000 years, holds the official position, know that there are hundreds and thousands of scholars have basically confirmed it.
So you're saying when we're praying behind, you don't need to say anything?
According to Hanafi school, you don't say anything, yes. That is the position. But if you want to follow, say for example, the Malik opinion or the Shafi or the Hanbali, then yes, you do recite. From what I know, Wallahu A'lam, according to the Maliki school of law, it's a nice solution. And the nice solution is as follows. Wallahu A'lam, if I'm wrong, then someone can correct me. Especially those who are watching YouTube and etc. According to the Maliki school of law, what you do is, in the loud prayers, the Musalli doesn't pray anything, recite anything, because you listen to the Imam. But in the quiet prayers, you do your Fatiha. Okay, so that's according to Malik Surah, Allahu Alam. And according to Shafi and Hanbali, you have to pray you have to recite behind the Imam Fatiha for every single rak'ah. So sometimes I did Salah when I was in Egypt in the local masjid, and after Fatiha, I say Fatiha, Dalleen, Amin, and loudly, but then they would request that leave a gap. Before I start the next surah, they would be like, can you please give us some time to recite a Fatiha? So I'd be like silent for about 30 seconds. The Imam will be silent for about 30 seconds, so that Musallis, because they have to recite Fatiha. But at the end of the day, if it's official position of a school of law, so be it. It seems a bit strange sometimes, especially because this is the norm here. But for where it's a norm, the opposite would seem like a very strange as well. So la bas inshallah, it's not if you feel like you're going to recite because it helps you to focus, khalas, do it. It's not a problem.
If you not give time for Fatah, the army, then if they not give time to,
Khalas, just listen to the Imam. I think for a lot of people ask me this question. So I'm saying for those people, a lot of people say, how am I supposed to just stay quiet and not recite anything? I feel I'll get lost in my mind, or I'll start thinking about other stuff. So if you feel like reciting Fatiha for you is going to help you to stay focused in Salah, recite Fatiha and recite Quran in the quiet Salahs, because it's going to help you. But in the loud prayer, it's better for you to listen to the Imam.
Of course.
Yeah. So if the Imam is not giving time, just listen to the Imam. Because the Imam Salah is the Salah of the Musallis. This is in the Hadith, like in many Hadith. The Salah of the Imam is for the Musallis, and that's why he's called the Imam. Imam Damin is guarantor. His Salah is basically leading the Salahs of others. And that's why in other areas, you're relying upon the Imam. For example, if you make a mistake or error, if you're praying by yourself, you'd have to correct it. But if you're behind the Imam Salah is going to keep that and give you that insurance, or that assurance, sorry. Yeah. And that correctness. Take us hadith up. Cara kata mana Zuhur namaz hai? Ji. Silent takle. Imam এর পিছনে. ইমাম যদি পড়ে ফেলে, ইমাম তো পড়বেন, সূরা ফাতিহা পড়বেন, আপনার জি পড়বেন, অন্য সূরা পড়বেন। ইমামের তেলাওয়াত অনুযায়ী আপনার তেলাওয়াত is covered. আপনি যদি পড়তে চান, পড়তে পারেন, no problem inshallah. But if you don't, then you just know that your salah is valid still. মানে আপনার কোনো অসুবিধা হবে না, is valid still. this is according to Shafi'i school perhaps. But according to the Hanafi school of law, according to other schools and other ulama, it's not a problem. According to hadith basically I'm talking about. لا بأس به إن شاء الله. Okay, جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.